Okay. I'm not the best reader, but I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try to read from my children's Bible. I'm sorry if you hear any noises from my dog. Cue my dog. um, I tried recording this on my phone, but it didn't really work, so this is on my computer, so I'm sorry for the low quality video. Yeah, I'm gonna start. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. The earth was a dark and empty place. There was only a roaring black ocean covering empty land. God called out in the darkness, "Let there be light." Suddenly light shone down and created the first day. On the second day, God said, "Let the sky be separated from the ocean." The ocean and the sky obeyed God's command. On the third day, God said, "Let the ocean be separated from the dry land, and let there be plants and trees so that the earth may be filled with living things." Trees spread their big leafy branches, and little flowers and plants sprung up out of the ground to greet the sun. On the fourth day, God said, "Let the moon and stars shine at night, and let the sun shine by day. These lights will mark the seasons and shed light on the earth." God looked around and saw that all he had done was good. On the fifth day, God said, "Let the ocean be filled with sea creatures." Just then, the water began to churn with life. Great whales lifted their mighty heads, dolphins jumped and splashed in the sunlight, and little sea crabs scuttled along the sea floor. God saw all this was good, so he said, "Let the sky be filled with creatures of the air." Seagulls swooped in the breeze along with butterflies and buzzing insects. God created all of them, big and small, and to each he gave his blessing. God was happy with the creatures of the sea and the air. On the sixth day, God said, "Let the deserts and valleys and mountains be filled with animals." And that's what happened. Elephants trumpeted loudly, giraffes stretched their spotted necks toward the trees, and porcupines waddled on the ground with their prickly bodies. The earth was home to animals of all shapes and sizes, both wild and tame. God loved watching them play with each other. He was very pleased and blessed each and every one of them. On the sixth day, God looked around at all the animals of the earth and the animals of the sea and sky. Still something was missing. So God said, "I will create man. He will be special because I will make him in my image." Then God took a handful of soil, and out of it he made Adam. God loved Adam. He even let Adam name all the animals. But God said, "It isn't good for man to be alone." So God took Adam's rib while he was asleep, and out of it he created the first woman. Her name was Eve. She was the perfect partner for Adam, and Adam loved her. God gave Adam and Eve his blessing. He said, "The earth is filled with animals you may rule over, and many good plants and fruits you may eat. Fill the earth with your children, and care for all of the living creatures." On the seventh day, God had no work left to do, so he made it a special day of rest. Adam and Eve lived in a garden called Eden. The Garden of Eden was a lush and colorful paradise. Plump, ripe fruit grew from the trees, flowers blossomed, and waterfalls crashed down merrily with clear, cool water. In the middle of the garden, God placed a tree called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The fruit eaten from this tree gave the power to know the difference between right and wrong. God told Adam that they could eat from any of the trees in the garden except for the fruit from the tree of knowledge. "If you eat from that tree," God warned, "you will die." One day a snake slithered up to Eve as she was walking in the garden. He hissed at her. "Eve," he said, "why don't you take a bite from that juicy piece of fruit hanging from the tree of knowledge?" Eve remembered what God had said. God told us we must not eat fruit from that tree," she replied. To this the snake answered, "That is only because the fruit will allow you to know the difference between right and wrong. God doesn't want you to be as wise as he is." The snake made Eve curious. What would be the harm in one tiny bite? Eve said to herself. So she sunk her teeth into the fruit and tasted it. Then Eve handed the fruit to Adam, and he also took a bite. For the first time, Adam and Eve looked at each other and realized they were both naked. They were embarrassed and quickly covered themselves up with the biggest fig leaves they could find. That afternoon, Adam and Eve heard God walking in the garden. They were frightened because they know they had disobeyed him. They hid behind the trees and plants, hoping God would not discover what they had done. But God knows all things. God called out to Adam, "Why did you disobey what I said and eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge?" Adam answered, "Eve is the one who took the fruit. It's her fault." And Eve said, "But it was the snake who told me to take the fruit, so it's the snake's fault." God loved Adam and Eve very much. He was disappointed that they did not listen to his command, but chose to listen to the sneaky snake instead. He gave Adam and Eve some animal skins to cover themselves up from the cold. Then he cast them out of the Garden of Eden. They had to live on dry land and work hard for their food. Adam and Eve had 2 sons named Cain and Abel. Cain farmed the land. Abel was a sheep farmer. One time, when the brothers were still young men, they made an offering to show God how much they loved him. Cain saved part of his harvest grain and offered it to God. Abel killed this firstborn lamb from one of the sheep. He butchered the lamb, cut off the best parts, and offered them to God. God was pleased. He accepted Abel's offering, but he didn't accept Cain's offering. Cain was filled with jealousy towards his brother Abel. So God said to Cain, "Why are you upset? If you do what is right, I will accept your offering." But Cain wasn't listening. He was too busy trying to figure out a way he could get back at his brother. A few days later, Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go for a walk." Abel followed his brother far off into the fields and over the rocks. When Cain was certain that they were all alone, he attacked his brother Abel. Later that day, God called out to Cain. "Where is Abel?" Cain answered, "How should I know? Am I supposed to look after my brother?" But Cain could not fool God. "Why have you done this terrible thing?" God asked him. "You've killed your own brother. From now on you will be without a home." So Cain had to leave his family. He wandered around from place to place, never really belonging anywhere. The world God made quickly filled with more and more people. God saw all their bad deeds. They cheated and stole and lied. God was disappointed in their behavior. He was sorry he had made them, so he decided to start over. God had planned a great flood. He would let rain pour down until it drenched the land and drowned the people. But there was one man God was pleased with. This man was Noah, and kind-hearted. This man was good and kind-hearted. His name was Noah. God told Noah about his plan to flood the earth. "You have made me happy," God said to Noah. "Because of that, I will save your family from the flood." Then God told Noah to gather up the thickest, strongest lumber he could find. He wanted Noah to build a boat called an ark. God said, make it big enough to hold your family and at least one male and female of every kind of animal on earth. Noah did just as God asked. He worked all day and all night hammering wood planks together and building the biggest boat the world had ever seen. After Noah finished the ark, God gave Noah 7 days to load all the animals and supplies. Noah made sure to have a special place ready for each kind of animal. He packed the ark full of food and supplies. Then the rain began. First a pitter-patter, and then a torrent. The dry land was covered in water. Noah knew the time had come for God's great flood. Noah went into the ark with his wife and children. Sorry about that. Noah knew the time had come for God's great flood. Noah went into the ark with his wife and children. Then the animals marched inside. 2 by 2, the animals crawled into their stalls. Everyone was glad to be safe on Noah's ark. Noah made sure his family was on board. Then he counted all the animals. Yep, everyone was there. They were ready to go. The flood rose higher, and God closed the door to the ark. Rain poured down for 40 days and 40 nights. The flood was so deep that it covered the highest mountain peaks. Nothing on the land survived. Only Noah, his family, and the animals were saved. God was watching over them when it stopped raining. Noah sent out a raven in search of land. The raven came back unable to find a place of dry land anywhere. So Noah sent out a dove. The dove returned just like the raven, but when Noah sent the dove out a second time, it returned with a branch from an olive tree. The bird had found land. Then Noah sent out the dove one last time, but this time the dove never returned. "I have ended the flood," God said to Noah. "You can leave the ark now." So Noah opened the door and called everybody out of the boat. Each of God's animals stepped off the boat. I'm so sorry. Each of God's animals stepped off the boat, stretching their legs and sniffing the clean, fresh air. It felt so good to walk on dry land after so many days on the swaying, shaky sea. God gave a blessing to Noah and his sons. He said to them, "May you have many children and grandchildren. This will be the land I will give to your families for generations to come. I saved you from the flood because you have been faithful and obeyed my commands. Now I will make a promise I will keep forever. I will never send another flood to destroy the earth again." Just then the sun broke through the rain clouds. A beautiful rainbow full of bright colors shone in the sky. God said, "The rainbow will be my sign to you that I always keep my promise. Every time you see a rainbow, remember I am with you. I will never leave you again." Noah's sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I am so sorry if I got those wrong. Noah's sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth had children, and their children had children too. Soon the world was filled with people again. Some of them settled in a place called Babylon. The people in Babylon decided to build a tower so high that it would reach heaven. "We will be famous, and God will be pleased with us," they said to one another. But when God saw the tall tower, he was not pleased. He saw that the people of Babylon were no longer humble servants. Instead, they were proud, believing they could reach God with their high tower. He punished the people by giving them each their own language. No one could understand each other anymore because of all... I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness, I keep yawning. He punished the people by giving them each their own language. No one could understand each other anymore because all the languages created a confusing babble of sounds. The tower could no longer be finished. They were too busy arguing in all their different languages. I am so sorry if I get this name wrong. Abram, I think it is. I'm going to go with it. Abram was one of God's special people. He lived in the city of Haran. I'm so sorry if I got that wrong too. One day God said to Abram, "Leave the place that you come from and go to the land I will show you." Abram trusted God with his whole heart. He loaded his camels with all of his belongings and left home with his wife, Sarai. I'm so sorry if I got that wrong. And his nephew Lot. I'm so sorry if I also got that wrong. All of their servants. They traveled through the desert hills with only God as their guide. When Abram and his family came to the land of Canaan, I think it says, I'm sorry if I got that wrong too. God said, "This land is yours. It will belong to your family forever. I will bless you and all the people in your family that come after you." I'm so sorry I keep yawning. Oh my goodness. "I will bless you and all the people in your family that come after you. Everyone on earth will be blessed by your life." Abram felt very thankful, so he set up an altar in the desert where he could worship God. Then Abram and the rest of the group journeyed onward. Finally, they came to a place they liked and pitched their tents and settled. I am so sorry I keep yawning. Abram was growing older. God had given him many things, a good wife, land, and animals. But there was one thing Abram wanted that God had not given him. Abram wanted to have a child with his wife Sarai, but God had never blessed them with one. Now they had wrinkles and gray hair. They had given up hope of ever being parents. One evening, God said to Abram, "Your name will be changed to Abraham, because you will be the father of many nations, and your wife's name will be changed to Sarah. Look at the brilliant night sky. Can you count the stars? That is how many descendants you will have." Abraham said, "I trust you, God. You have already given me everything I could ask for, but how can I be the father of many when I have no children?" God answered, "You will have a son with your wife Sarah, and everything you will have be his." I'm so sorry. Let me reread that. "You will have a son with your wife Sarah, and everything you have will be his." Abraham could hardly believe it, but he had faith. He got down on his knees and thanked God. One hot summer afternoon, Abraham was sitting outside his tent when 3 travelers came by. Abraham saw them, and he jumped up and called out to them, "Come, let me get you some water and wash your tired feet." Then Abraham ran back to the tent. "Sarah," he said, "would you make some bread for our guests?" Sarah cooked while Abraham went out in search of his best calf to serve with some milk and yogurt. The men gathered around under the shady trees, sharing a drink and talking. Sarah was listening by the tent door. One of the men, Abraham, your wife, will give birth to a son soon. One of them said, Abraham, your wife will give birth to a son soon. When Sarah heard this, she laughed to herself. Why did Sarah laugh? God asked Abraham. Doesn't she think she can have a child in her old age? I am God, and nothing is too difficult for me. I promise by this time next year you will already have your baby boy. The 3 travelers got up to leave. Abraham walked with them a ways. God said to Abraham, I have heard that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, I think that says, I'm sorry if I got that wrong too, are doing all kinds of evil things. I have heard that many of them sin and carry out wicked deeds. I am going to see if all of this is true. What do you think, Abraham? Abraham thought about it. Then he turned to God and said, What if there are 50 good people living in Sodom? Are you going to destroy those in the city who are righteous? God answered, I will save the city for 50 good people. Then Abraham asked, What if there are 40 good people? And God told Abraham, If there are 40 good people, excuse me. If there are 40 good people, I still won't destroy the city. Again, I am so sorry, excuse me. Abraham thought for a moment, then he said, God, what about 20 good people? Will you destroy the city if there are 20 good people? God told Abraham, If there are 20 good people, I still won't destroy the city. But Abraham was still not satisfied. And what if there are only 10 good people? Yet again, God told Abraham, If there are only 10 good people, I won't destroy the city. Then God departed, and Abraham turned back to his tent where Sarah was waiting. Abraham's nephew Lot lived in the city of Sodom. I'm so sorry, I don't know. 2 angels came to warn Lot of God's plan to destroy the city. Lot invited them into his home for the night. The angels told Lot, God has plans to destroy the city of Sodom because Sodom? I'm so sorry, I need to pick one. I'm going to go with Sodom, I guess. I'm sorry. God has plans to destroy the city of Sodom because it is turning into a dark and evil place. Your family has been faithful and good. You will be saved by God's grace. I'm so sorry I keep yawning. It is really late at night. A group of men from Sodom had gathered outside Lot's home to attack the 2 angels. The angels bolted the door and said, Lot, take your family and all your relatives and leave now. God plans to burn this wicked city. Quick, leave before the city turns to ash. Lot got his wife and 2 daughters. They hurried and stumbled over the rocks and escaped from the burning city. God had not forgotten his promise to Abraham. He saved Lot and his family. God kept his promise to Abraham and Sarah. He gave them a healthy baby boy. They named him Isaac. Isaac was a beautiful baby. Abraham was very proud. Sarah looked up at her husband and said, Who would have guessed that we would have a son in our old age? I will never laugh at God's promises again. Now I think it's silly I ever doubted God at all. Isaac was a good baby, and they both loved him dearly. As Isaac grew older, Abraham and Sarah spent a lot of time with him. Abraham taught Isaac all about God's wonderful world. Sarah went on long walks with the young boy. She pointed out the animals and plants and taught Isaac their names. Abraham and Sarah knew Isaac would grow up into a strong servant of God. After several years had passed, God decided to test Abraham's trust and obedience. God said to Abraham, Go get Isaac, your son, whom you love so dearly. Take him to the high mountain top of Moriah. I'm so sorry if I got that wrong. And kill him on an altar as a sacrifice in honor of me. Abraham's heart nearly broke with sadness when he heard God's words. Abraham had cared for Isaac, played with Isaac, and taught him all kinds of things. Now God was asking him to sacrifice his promised child. But Abraham was filled with faith and love for God. He knew that his only choice was to obey. Abraham got up early the next morning and chopped wood for the altar. He tied the wood into bundles. Then he told Isaac to come with him up the steep mountain. Abraham and Isaac were out of breath by the time they reached the top. Abraham took the wood and coals and made an altar on the spot where God had told him to sacrifice Isaac. I am so sorry, I keep yawning. Then Isaac said, "Father, we have the coals and the wood, but where is the lamb for the sacrifice?" Abraham answered sadly, "God will provide the lamb, son." Abraham knew that God had intended Isaac to be the sacrifice, but he just couldn't bring himself to tell his son. Abraham tied up Isaac, but just as he was about to kill him, the angel of the Lord called out, "Stop, Abraham, don't kill Isaac. Now I know that you are willing to sacrifice the most precious thing that belongs to you. You trusted me and obeyed my command. Because of this, I will bless your family forever." Abraham sighed with relief. He sacrificed a ram to God instead. Then Abraham and Isaac went home with happy hearts, grateful to God. I think I'm going to go in maybe 10 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm getting really tired. Many years went by, and Sarah had passed away. Abraham knew that soon he would be called up to heaven too. Before he died, he wanted to find a good wife for his son Isaac. Abraham called one of his most trusted servants to him. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. Before he died, he wanted to find a good wife for his son Isaac. Abraham called one of his most trusted servants to him. "Go to the land where I was born," Abraham told him. "My brother Nahor," I'm going to go with it because I can't think of anything else. "My brother Nahor lives there. Find a good woman among his people for my son Isaac to marry." When the servant arrived, he was worn out from his long, tiresome journey. He rested with his camels near a well. There was a woman named Rebecca, I think it is. It's just spelled a little differently than what I know. There, a woman named Rebecca was filling her water jar. The servant asked her for a drink. "I'll be glad to give you a drink," she answered. Then she saw the servant's thirsty camels and kindly offered them some water as well. Abraham's servant had brought along some gold bracelets to give as gifts, and he placed them on Rebecca's arm. "Thank you for your kindness," he told her. Then he said, "Tell me, who is your family?" Rebecca replied, "My father is Bethuel, I think it says. There's another word that I'm just going to guess, but we're just going to go with the sentence. My father is Bethuel, the son of Milcah and Nahor." Abraham's servant knew that he had found the right woman for Isaac. Not only was Rebecca kind and generous, she was also Abraham's relative. The servant told Rebecca that he had come on behalf of her uncle Abraham, so she invited him back to her home to stay with her family. Abraham's servant told Rebecca's father why he had come. "I have been sent to find a wife for my master Abraham's son, Isaac, among his relatives." Then the servant said, "Rebecca has impressed me with her gentle kindness. I would like her to come back with me and be Isaac's wife." Rebecca's father and her brother Laban, Rebecca's father and her brother Laban knew that this was God's plan. They were sad to see Rebecca go, but they were happy for her also. Isaac was walking out in his father's field when the servant and Rebecca approached on their camels. Rebecca spotted Isaac right away. There was something special about him. "Who is that man walking out there?" Rebecca asked. The servant replied, "That's Isaac, the man you will marry." So Isaac and Rebecca were married. They loved each other dearly, and Abraham could die happily knowing Isaac had a family of his own. Oh, these names are going to be hard to say. I'm sorry. Rebecca and Isaac wanted to have children, but God did not give them any. I'm so sorry, I gotta yawn. Sorry about that. Rebecca and Isaac wanted to have children, but God did not give them any. Isaac prayed to God to bring them a child. Finally, God answered his prayer. Rebecca became pregnant. She knew that she was pregnant with twins because she could feel them fighting with each other inside of her. One day, God came to Rebecca and said, "You will be blessed with 2 boys." But just like they are fighting inside of your womb, they will fight as they grow older too. They will separate into two different nations. The younger son will be strong and great. The older son will be his servant. After 9 long months of carrying the babies inside of her, Rebekah gave birth. The first baby came out, and he was covered with bright red hair. They named him Esau, I think it is. I am so sorry if I got that wrong, but I'm going to pronounce it like that. They named him Esau. The second baby came out just behind, holding on to his brother's heel. They named him Jacob. Jacob and Esau were very different. Esau was an excellent hunter, while Jacob tended sheep. Esau was his father's favorite son, but Jacob was his mother's favorite son, because Esau was the oldest. He had certain birthrights that Jacob did not have. One evening, Jacob was cooking a stew at his camp. Esau was out on a hunt when he smelled the delicious food wafting up from the pot. "That red stew you're cooking smells good, brother. May I have some?" Esau asked. "Yes," Jacob said. "I will give you some of my stew if you promise to give me something in return." "What do you want?" asked Esau, who was growing hungrier by the minute and was happy to agree to anything. "Sell me your birthrights," replied Jacob. Esau quickly reached for the bowl of stew. "Sure, why not?" Esau said without a thought. "What good are they to me, anyway?" Then he gulped down the stew while Jacob smiled to himself. Jacob knew that he had tricked his brother. Isaac was now old and blind and close to dying. Before he died, he wanted to give his oldest son, Esau, a special blessing. It was his birthright as the eldest son because Rebekah loved Jacob the best. She wanted Jacob to have the blessing instead of his brother. "Go to your father," Rebekah said to Jacob one evening. He will think you are your brother Esau, and he will give you his blessing." But Jacob said, My brother is a hairy man, and I am not. If my father finds out I am tricking him, he will curse me." Rebekah was a clever woman. She quickly took some goat skins and wrapped them around Jacob's hands and neck. When Jacob went to his father and said, "It's me, Esau," Isaac reached out and felt his hairy arms and believed that he was telling the truth. He laid his hands on his son's head and gave a blessing that endowed him with strength and courage. This blessing meant that God would be with him forever. When Esau came home, he rushed to see his father. "Father, it's Esau. I'm home from my hunt, and I've brought you some meat." Isaac suddenly realized he had given his blessing to the wrong son. Esau and his father were upset, but it was already too late. Jacob had God's blessing. Esau was furious at his brother Jacob for tricking him. He had forgotten about the promise he had made to Jacob to give him his birthrights. He thought Jacob had unrightfully stolen his blessing. He boiled inside with anger towards Jacob. He decided that after his father died, he would kill Jacob. When Rebekah found out what Esau planned to do, she ran to Jacob. "Jacob, my son," she cried, "your brother Esau is angrier with you than he's ever been. He is just waiting for the time when he can kill you. Listen carefully and do what I say. Go to the home of my brother Laban in the town of Haran, and stay with him for a while when it is safe. I will send for you to come home again." Jacob packed his things and prepared to leave his family home. Rebekah sent Jacob off on his long journey with a mournful wave goodbye. She was sorry to see her beloved son leave. Jacob traveled over hot deserts and dry plains. He was worn out and stopped just before nightfall to find a good place to sleep. After he found a good spot, he lay down and rested his head on a rock for a pillow. That night, Jacob had a brilliant dream. He saw a stairway that reached from the ground up to heaven. God's angels were going up and down the stairway. God spoke to him and said, "Jacob, I have been with your father and your grandfather. Now I am with you. I will give you and your family the land on which you are now sleeping. Your descendants will be as many as the specks of dust on the ground. I will never leave you or the people that come after you." Jacob woke up early the next morning, feeling rested and peaceful. He remembered his dream. Then he stood up on its end. The rock he had used as a pillow. He poured olive oil on the rock in honor of God. Then Jacob kneeled down and prayed, "Watch over me, Lord God. I will never do." Whoa, 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 whoa. I am so sorry. I completely got that wrong. I'm getting really tired. I'm sorry. Watch over me, Lord God, and I will worship you forever. At last Jacob came to the land where his uncle lived. He looked out into a field and saw some shepherds by a well. He walked over to them and asked, "Do you know a man named Laban?" "Yes, we do," they said, "and here comes his daughter Rachel with her sheep." The shepherds pointed to a girl who was heading towards the well. Jacob told Rachel that he was the son of her aunt Rebekah. Rachel was amazed and ran off to go and find her father. Jacob went with her. When When Laban heard about Jacob, he ran out and kissed him. He put his arm around Jacob and said, "You are family. Stay here with us as long as you please." So Jacob stayed and lived with Laban and his children. He helped Laban by watching over his animals. One day Laban said to Jacob, "It isn't right for you to work without pay. What can I give you in return?" By this time Jacob had fallen in love with Rachel. Her sparkling eyes made him happy, so he told Laban, "If you let me marry Rachel, I will work 7 years for you." So Laban and Jacob made an agreement. Jacob worked 7 years for Laban. He didn't complain once, and he always did his best. The time did not seem very long for Jacob because he was so in love with Rachel. At last the day came for the wedding. Laban prepared a big feast with lots of friends and family. But when Laban brought out the bride, it was his daughter Leah, and not Rachel. Jacob panicked. He turned to Laban and said, "Where's Rachel? I worked 7 years for her, not Leah." Laban told him, "In our country, the oldest daughter must marry first. You can marry Rachel, but you'll have to work 7 more years for me." So Jacob married Leah, and then Rachel too. But he had to work 7 more years for Laban. Jacob worked many years for Laban. He had many children with his wives, and he was eager to start his own life. Laban had several sons, and they were jealous of his brother-in-law Jacob. "Jacob is richer than any of us," they complained. "But if it wasn't for our family, he wouldn't have had anything." I'm so sorry. "Jacob is richer than any of us," they complained. "But if it wasn't for our family, he wouldn't have anything at all." Laban and his sons became less and less friendly towards Jacob. The Lord came to Jacob and said, "Go back to the land of your family, and I will bless you." So Jacob sent for Rachel and Leah. He told them, "I have worked a long time for your father. Never once have I cheated him, and I've always done what was best for his sake. But every day I feel less welcome here. Now the Lord has come to me and told me what to do. It's time for me to return to Canaan." Rachel and Leah said, "Do what the Lord asked, and we will go with you. You are a good man, but our father is treating all of us like strangers." One day, while Laban and his sons were out working, Jacob loaded the camels with all of his possessions. Leah and Rachel gathered their children together and prepared to leave. I'm sorry, my leg is hurting. One day, while Laban and his sons were out working, Jacob loaded the camels with all his possessions. Leah and Rachel gathered their children together and prepared to leave. Rachel went back and grabbed one last thing. She took her father's precious statue and hid it in her sack. Then the group left before Laban could see that they had gone. When Laban found out that Jacob had run away, he was furious. Then he saw that his precious statue was missing. When Laban found out that Jacob had run away, he was furious. Then he saw that his precious statue was missing, so he rode after them, searching the countryside high and low. 7 days later he caught sight of them in the hill country of Gilead. But God appeared to Laban in a dream and said, "Don't say anything to Jacob, not a promise or a threat." Laban was too angry to listen. He stormed in on Jacob's camp and yelled, "Why have you run away with my daughters like a kidnapper? And why have you stolen my statue like a thief?" But Jacob stayed calm. He told Laban, "I left without telling you because otherwise you would not have let us go. As for your statue, we haven't taken it. Go ahead, search our tents." Laban searched every tent, and he did not find anything. Rachel had hidden the statue in her saddlebag, and she was sitting on top of it. "I am not a thief," Jacob finally told Laban. In the last 20 years, I've never stolen a single thing from you. I've worked 14 years just to earn your daughters. Then I had to work another 6 years to buy your sheep and goats. All that time you tricked me out of my pay. God saw that I was in trouble, and he has helped me. He is on my side, and he has told me what to do. Laban told Jacob, God has told me not to hurt you, and I cannot take my daughters from you, because they are your family now. So let's make an agreement. We will pile up some large rocks in this place. These rocks will remind us that the Lord watches over both of us, even when we are apart from one another. I won't come after you or try to steal my daughters back, but you must promise to take good care of them and my children and my grandchildren too. Remember, the Lord is watching us, and he will make sure we keep our agreement. Jacob sacrificed an animal to the Lord to show that he would keep the agreement. Then together, Jacob and Laban ate a meal and spent the night on the mountain. In the morning, Laban got ready to leave. He hugged and kissed his daughters and grandchildren, then went back to his home. I think that's where I'm going to finish this. I plan to stop at 30 minutes, but I wanted it to kind of close off at not like a cliffhanger type of deal. I hope I made you fall asleep, honestly, but I'm not too sure that happened. I hope you enjoyed the video, at least. Rest well. Good night.